Here at PHNX Suns, we thank you for taking a break from March Madness to have some March sense with two of the most sensible Suns people on the face of the earth. There's no madness to be found here. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the PHNX Suns Show presented by Bet365. Download the Bet365 app and use code PHNX365 when you sign up and find out why, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. I'm Gerald Bourguet. This is Steven Pridgeon-Garner here on a shorthanded show because our guy Eric is doing the Lord's work with a 24-hour live stream because ASU made promises and now the check has come due. Thank you for winning the Big 12 ASU. This has been fun to watch. Make sure you guys go over and give them some love as soon as this Sun show wraps up. They're doing a great job so far. Steven, how you doing today?
I've had a much less busy morning than Eric and the ASU crew,
Yes.
but busy nonetheless. A lot of fun stuff to kind of look at with the Suns showing some positives and not having to continue to ring on the things that we've grown pretty much tired of speaking to all season long. It's been a breath of fresh air the last couple of games, so I'm looking forward to that. But how about you? How was practice?
Doing all right. We were hoping to get Mike Budenholzer and some injury updates at practice. That did not happen, but we did talk to Collin, Gillespie, and Nick Richards, and we are going to be speaking on some of those positives because it's been a minute since we've had some. Obviously, wins over the Raptors and Bulls are not going to sway the more pessimistic fans, but I do think heading into this stretch, based on what we've seen from the rotation, based on what we've seen from some tweaks in playing style, there could be some positives to look forward to over this upcoming stretch. So we are going to get into all of that. But before we do that, look, we're not going to beat around the bush. There is a lot of conversation on social media, on Twitter right now, surrounding Kevin Durant, surrounding the way he's covered. We're not going to get into that war, nor do I want any part of it at this point in time. But we should acknowledge it, and I do think we should present some counterpoints because every time that we've heard from teammates talk about Kevin Durant, obviously they're not going to speak ill of their own teammate, one of the greatest of all time, but it does feel like there is not a concerted effort, but it just feels natural for guys to talk about how much his influence means to them. And we got the latest example of that from Ryan Dunn, who appeared on the Run Your Race podcast. Here's what he had to say about the Suns instilling shooting confidence him and KD's kind of role in that.
You know, during training camp, we're going, me and him and, you know, our other rookie Oso, and me and him are trying to guard everybody.
Yeah.
Like, I knew that was coming in my thing. Like, they need defense. Like, we're going to come in. But there were times where, like, I will pass up on a shot and Kade's like, fuck are you doing? Like, shoot the ball. Like, I need you to shoot that. Same thing with Book, same thing with Coach Bud. Like, they were like, we need you to let those go. And I think what you got that, I'm like, all right, they trust me to let these go wide open and contested. It's a whole, you're in a whole nother mindset.
You're in a different world at that point.
You're just like, all right.
Because for you to help the team, you have to open up the floor for them. So
Exactly.
they know you're going to be a scoring threat. They can't double them. They can't do these things. And that's why a guy like you and Royce are so pivotal to the team, because y'all guard, y'all make shots.
It doesn't sound like a lot because a lot of people want to see the more demonstrative vocal leadership on the court, which KD does. We've seen that on the sidelines. We've seen it on the court. It's funny how being passionate and having heated exchanges with Budenholzer has been twisted into some negative things when this whole time we've been wanting KD to be vocal and be a leader and all this stuff that he's already doing. But just the impact on a young player of an all-time great like Kevin Durant saying, what are you doing? Shoot the ball when he doesn't shoot. I think that matters for a guy, especially for this guy who coming out of the draft was billed as, you know, he's a great defender. Can he do anything on the offensive end? I think that matters to him.
It matters a whole lot if you have one of the best scorers, best shooters of all time, the most lethal telling you, take shots. The shots that he's seeing you take at practice ad nauseum, the shots he's seeing you make at practice ad nauseum. Why are you doing this work at practice if you're not going to attempt to do the very same things in the game? And I think that mindset and the confidence that KD speaks with and the way that resonates more than anything else, I think is, I'm not going to give him all the credit because that obviously goes to Ryan, but if there's anything external of him that can kind of give him a push in manners in which he needs, KD's definitely been his biggest cheerleader. I think someone on Twitter said the other day, there's no bigger fan in the world of Ryan Dunn than Kevin Durant. And I think that's vice versa as well in terms of how much they cheer for each other's successes and push each other on the competitive side. And I think those moments that we're speaking to with KD and leadership and him just being vocal in ways that resonate with individuals extends past Ryan Dunn, but it's obviously the loudest with Ryan Dunn in particular.
Absolutely. And we've heard from so many people on the Suns that these young guys are like sponges. And most rookies come into the league that way. But it's not just listening to what he has to say. It's also following his example and absorbing every ounce of that. Because, you know, when you're working out over the summer with Kevin Durant and you're seeing what he does, you're picking up on his habits. And obviously you can't just come into the league and replicate Kevin Durant by getting a few workouts in with him. But you can pick up on little things about how he carries himself, how he conducts himself in workouts, the confidence that he is trying to instill in Ryan Dunn. And it's pretty clear from listening to the second clip from Run Your Race that these things are being instilled in him just from watching him lead by example.
Talk about playing with Kevin Durant. Working out with Kevin Durant is a different breed. He goes full speed.
Every rep.
Every rep. I worked out with him one time. I said, I don't know if I can do it again.
Do it again.
First of all, it's demoralizing. I'm not making the same amount of shots.
Yeah. He
makes every shot.
You're not. He doesn't really miss. Every rep is the same. And the thing he does so well, which I'm learning, and like I'm grateful to like have him, and not even him, like Devin and Brad, and even all these guys that like are great offensively. I'm learning. I'm seeing how they see the game. Like I'm more observant. Like I don't like to. I need to ask more questions, but I'm more observant. Like I like to watch and see how they really work, and like they really imagine themselves picking spots, where to go, and trusting themselves.
KD messed up there though.
In the game, and he's sick. Like he talks to anybody. Like he will talk to anybody.
He don't care.
He don't care at all. But seeing him at work every day, you just see you understand why he's Kevin Durant. You see it. Like he's not he's not taking up any nonsense. He's serious when it comes to his work. And it's even cool now because like there was times where like he let me join his workouts. So now I'm working out with him as a rookie, picking his brain and like watching him. And like I was more just sitting on the backside, like, all right, I'll watch you, let you do your thing. He's like, nah, just come work out with me. So like even before shooting around sometimes, and then at the practice facility, I'll walk in. He's like, come hop in, and like we'll do some like mid-range stuff, some threes, getting through his routine, and I'm just following him, like not trying to do everything. So watching him, it's great, and you know that's someone that I always wanted to grow my game when I got serious. Like I always watched him growing up, so kind of a surreal moment to have him as a teammate.
1000%.
And he's just a very like that guy. So appreciate that.
Nah, that's dope. I remember I was in BK with him, and it was kind of annoying. I was like a test dummy.
You were just guarding.
I was just guarding him.
Yeah.
But then we ended up hooping a little bit, and we did the same thing. I got my own, held my own a little bit.
Yeah.
It's just different, bro. He's 7 foot.
7 foot, and you might play the best defense of your life.
It don't matter. He don't see you.
He don't see nobody.
He don't see nobody.
And once he gets in the mid post, I think that's the deadliest spot in my life.
What a fun clip, man. Like, what a fun clip.
There's a lot to unpack in that.
Like, there's just so much to get to. I think maybe what stands out most with Ryan, him speaking to KD and Book and Brad, and the visualization part of everything that they do in preparation. You can talk about all of the drills. You can talk about all of the workouts and all of the movement patterns. But what's the difference is everything between the ears with players like that. And I think there's no better kind of bookmark moment than everybody making fun of KD in the middle of the club working on his shooting form. Like a sicko. No different than we've talked about Chris Paul and the manners in which he goes about manipulating advantages with the ball or with referees and things like that. Kevin Durant is a sicko. And I think that is, you're talking about the work ethic and things like that. Those are things that Ryan can implement into just his daily process. For him, it's not going to be him shooting free throws in the club. Maybe he's working on defensive slides in the club, or working on fronting in the post in the club. Like there's just little bits that where you can reverse engineer things that you see in greatness from others. And I think that alone is leadership past the literal conversations that are being had.
That kind of nuance always seems to get lost in these discussions when we always talk about KD and body language and all these different things. And look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Like we've said on this show many times, every person bears their fair share of responsibility in the Suns season going the way that it's been, but it does feel disproportionate in terms of where it's been heading. And I do think for the people that always hone in on Kevin Durant, a lot of it has to do with the fact that he's not happy with the way that the team has played, and rightfully so. We would be sitting up here hammering him if you looked at him and he just was totally checked out and didn't care and didn't have these heated exchanges or didn't have these post-game media sessions where it's like, yeah, he knows that they're playing well, but he understands they still have to build on it. They still have a lot of work to do. So to me, that is the leadership by example that gets lost so much in this conversation. And it's nice to see Ryan Dunn and pretty much every other teammate, when we ask about these types of things, be able to provide those types of examples, this being a more colorful and fun one from him and Theo Pinson, who does a great job on his show. We do appreciate when former players come back and host a pod or host a show, and they do it in a way that grows and expands and appreciates the game, instead of some former NBA legends that we see get up on national TV and continually crap on it, but that's neither here nor there. Anything else that you'd like to add to this KD convo? Because I know that the way that he's been covered has been a hot topic of conversation recently. We don't have to get into specific examples or anything, but I do still hope that there's a way the Suns can kind of repair this relationship and find a way to A, get off of Beal's contract, and B, build around KD and Book the right way this time.
Yeah, for me, the big thing just continues to, like, you're not going to get better in trading him for one. Yeah. But also he's someone that has voluntarily suggested that he wants to retire a Phoenix Sun. Right. Like, how lucky do you have to be to not only draft a Devin Booker that wants to stay loyal to one franchise, but also acquire a superstar that's had all type of experience that could have his pick of the litter of teams if he chose to want to go elsewhere, but comes to your franchise and says, no, this is where I want to retire, whenever that might be, whether that be 10 years, 6 years, 4 years, and knowing that you have someone next to Devin Booker that complements him and vice versa in ways in which can always give you an edge going into a game and at the highest of stakes. You have to strike an insane amount of luck to get that in just one player, but you have it in two. Do what you can to absolutely get the most out of that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everyone who is tuning in, taking a break from March Madness. Ted Offensive, Sandman 520, Maria, one of our favorites, Ogre McFubin, who is a diehard. Be cool like Ogre and become a diehard. We have a lot more to talk about in terms of the Suns' rotations, what they've built upon, especially on the defensive end, and looking at their remaining schedule. And we're going to get to all of that right after this break. Steven, you may not know this, but I am having a kid soon. And one thing that you realize when you're having a kid is that you need to have your finances in order. You need to be able to track where your money is going. And I don't know about you, but after using Monarch for a little bit, I'm realizing that I have spent way too much money on food delivery services. That stuff really, really does add up, and you don't realize it because you're just too lazy to go out and drive for it. But finances can be messy and confusing, so Monarch Money does act like your personal CFO, and they give you full visibility and control so you can stop earning and start growing. Start managing your finances to build the life that you actually want. Monarch makes managing money simple, even for busy lives. And it's the finance tool that people actually love. It was named Wall Street Journal's best budgeting app of 2025. So get control of your overall finances with Monarch Money. Use code PHNX at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code PHNX. And another good friend of ours is Waymo. I have used Waymo a few times, and it's very cool just in terms of the autonomous cars. It's not driverless per se, but it's autonomous, and they use all electric Jaguar I-Pace vehicles. I didn't know this, but across San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Phoenix, they do 150,000 trips per week.
That's insane.
That is insane. Over 40 million miles of real world driving experience. That's more miles than LeBron James has on his NBA odometer. So that is really impressive. 40 million miles is enough to drive to the moon and back 80 times.
That's insane.
That is very insane. That's a lot of trips to the moon. I don't know why you would take that many to the moon, but if you need to take a local trip, Waymo is the way to go. Download the Waymo One app and ride today with Waymo. All right, Steven. We also should probably talk about the fact that Gila River Wild Horse Pass, we are doing another show there. Actually, we just did this show, so never mind on that. Let's talk about Sun stuff instead. How about that? We were looking at the wrong day. That's fine. So one thing that I've noticed over the last week, we have talked a lot about, the rookies coming in and having an impact. We've talked about Collin Gillespie, Cody Martin. We are going to bring all of those guys up again. But the biggest thing that has stood out to me over the last week or so, when you look at the last 4 or 5 games and the way that it feels like the Suns are maybe kind of slowly starting to turn things around, is the defensive side of the ball. I think they're 12th in defensive rating over these last 5 games when Oso and Ryan got thrown back into the rotation. But a big part of it has been this switchable defense. And we've talked a lot about the Suns being in the drop for pick and roll coverage for most of the year. Mike Budenholzer has come out and doubled down, saying, I don't really consider changing things up. I doubled down on my principles. And it really does feel like the Sun, this might have been a point of contention behind the scenes. But early in the year, we heard Devin Booker and Kevin Durant talk about Bradley Beal at the point of attack and how, he's doing the Lord's work basically because they don't switch a lot. And it's a lot harder to get around all those screens like Brad was doing. Brad's defense has obviously fallen off from the beginning of the year, but that was when I first clocked that they were kind of bringing up that we don't switch a lot. We don't switch a lot. And now you're hearing players talk about, it's really good that we're switching a little bit more. Just in case you don't follow every post-game interview, here's what Devin Booker and Kevin Durant had to say about that recently.
I think just switching up the coverages with different groups. When we throw Oso in there, just switching a lot of ball screens and trying to, force teams to play one-on-one instead of, running through their sets. So, we're just a little bit more connected right now. And, this is what we've been waiting on, so we got to sustain it.
Just the physicality on defense as far as switching and as far as keeping our man in front. We struggle a lot this year with keeping our man in front one-on-one defensively, and that causes a lot of breakdowns, which causes a lot of threes, and which just throws the game out of whack when you can't guard one-on-one, So I think the last, I wouldn't even say, even though we lost some games, I think our one-on-one defense has been solid the last week or two, So as more as we can rely on that and not having to put too many resources on the ball, extra help, a flood guy from the baseline when they got ISO, or a full-on hit at the top of the key when we got an ISO, when we can just guard up and not use too many resources on defense, because we need them in other places, rebounding, a little bit of help. And we need to guard our man, though, So as much as we can guard our man one-on-one, the better we'll become as a defensive team. And I think I've seen the growth in that the last couple of weeks.
But wait, there's more, because at practice today we spoke to Nick Richards and I asked him what they wanted to carry over from these last 2 wins and these last 4 or 5 games defensively. And this is what he had to say.
I think the Reading switching has been great for us so far. We did that today. We tried to add a little bit more layers to it. But I think that overall, I think us as a team have just been buying in on the things the coaches have been saying and everything that's been thrown our way.
To your point about the switching, you've been able to do that. How comfortable are you with kind of some of the things that you guys are starting to do as far as the switching goes?
The switching is not. I think that I'm very comfortable with the switching. I think that it's something that a lot of teams in the NBA are doing nowadays. I think it makes the defense easier on everybody. But I think we're just gonna have to figure out how to consistently do it throughout these next couple games.
How gratifying is this moment for you, Steven?
We are here.
We're finally
here.
70 games in.
Yes. this is not by any means victory lapping in any capacity. I just feel like it was like the elephant in the room. You have to switch something up, literally and figuratively, if the base is not working. Mm-hmm. And for them, it took a while. It took a lot longer than I feel like it should have, but we're here. And they're starting to, the process is working a little bit quicker than I may have expected to, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. I mean, Katie, it is working. It's funny because we, for weeks, had been advocating, like, man, we need to play the rookies. We need to switch a little bit more. We need to try different things. Mm-hmm. I was expecting it to have an impact. I was not expecting it to be so glaring as opposed to the weeks that have come before. And I still will continue to urge, especially as the competition ramps up, like, the rookies might not have the same night and day impact on the court that they've had. Ryan Dunn might not continue to score 13 to 17 points on a nightly basis. They might not continue to outscore their opponents by drastic margins and points off turnovers and all these big turnarounds that we've seen recently. But with that being said, it's more about process at this point. And if they had games like these against the Raptors and the Bulls back in December and January, we would probably feel a lot better about where we are here in mid-March. Like, it's very disappointing that we will always look back on the last 2 to 3 months and wonder what could have been, because right now the Suns are fighting for their lives to just secure a play-in spot and have the right to probably get swept by the Thunder in the first round. And it could have been different if they'd have had months to build on these things, and it wasn't always going to be pretty, but it was probably going to be a lot prettier than what we've seen over these last few weeks. And that's kind of the frustrating part for me. As much as it's good to see Bud kind of finally tailor his approach to what the roster and the personnel calls for, it's really disappointing for me that it took 70 games in for us to get to this point.
That's exactly it for me. I genuinely can't help but think about how far along in this process, but also how positively impactful it could have been for their actual record and their rankings among the Western Conference's elite. Even if they were only 5 or 6 wins better, that's enough to put them on the brink of not even being in the play-in tournament altogether, or at least be in a space where they can viably expect to potentially be out of that by the end of the regular season versus being on the cusp of not even making it at all. And I think that in and of itself hits the confidence of the players, the trust of the players, and there's a lot of compounding impact that comes from that. For me personally, I'll go back to November 18th, a game against the Orlando Magic. They're getting blitzed. There's some injuries and whatnot, but Franz Wagner is getting everything that he wants. Everything off the dribble. Right. Manipulating switches, getting into pick and roll, hitting the bigs, getting to his midi, getting to the basket. Oso Ighodaro checks in, and I think the second or third quarter, all of a sudden they start switching everything, and now Franz can't even get to the basket. Now he's selling for contested middies or shots from teammates that are grenades late in the shot clock, and the Suns give up 20 points on like 30-something% from the field. Right. They come back in the game, they end up winning that game, and that's the turning point. And in my head, I'm just like, what if they were able to lean into that a lot more than just in random stretches where Oso happens to get minutes? What if that's baked into their process where they have their base where they're running drop, but they also have timely moments where they can go to switching lineups because they have personnel that suggest that they can. And every moment since that November 18th game, or I think it was like November maybe 24th or somewhere around there, I've just been kind of thinking like maybe they could use a lot more of that. They had the personnel then. They go and trade for Cody Martin to add to Ryan Dunn. And now they have even more of that, and they're finally starting to lean into it.
Yeah, like I said on last night's postgame show, it was really nice to hear that phrase, now checking in Ryan Dunn to replace Cody Martin, because you are having switchable point-of-attack defenders who are wings checking in and out of the game for each other. I never thought I would see the day, and it's nice to finally see it. It's nice to see Ryan Dunn and Cody Martin be in there and be able to switch and guard multiple positions, to see Oso Ighodaro be up to the level of a screen and be able to hold his own against the ball handler, even if it's just for 4 or 5 seconds, a dribble or two. Sometimes that's all it takes to close out a possession instead of seeing one of the slower bigs. Like, remember back in the early part of the year when we were watching Yusuf Nurkic get blown by off the dribble, it is nice to have a different alternative there for when those other coverages that we've seen all season long fail, when those things don't work. So And the switchable lineups, like it's telling that Book and Katie immediately point to those things, both of them, like unprompted. You don't have to ask about switchable defense, and that's the thing that they point to because they know how much it makes their lives easier, not just defensively, but on the other end as well, because when they are actually generating turnovers and getting out and running, those guys don't have to see a set defense taking the ball out of the net. They don't have to see blitzes. They can attack in transition. They can attack and play with more pace, which is something that Oso also brings to the table. So it's remarkable how much going to two rookies, a guy who was on the Charlotte Hornets, and a two-way player who's too good for the G League, but a two-way player nonetheless, have basically turned the season around. Because if they hadn't done that, this team would probably be all but eliminated from the play-in hunt right now instead of having a chance with this brutal gauntlet that's coming up.
Absolutely. And I have a couple of quotes from back in November after that game against the Magic that I've kind of bookmarked, speaking specifically to Oso and how the Suns had pieces that can help him play to his strengths, which is switching and being able to flatten an offense out and keep everybody else on his team defensively out of rotation. So, no, if we can get the first of those two clips, I mentioned that some of the greatest value Oso Ighodaro brings is when he's on the floor at the center position because of the switching. The Suns can dictate to opponents with switching a coverage also known as red. And then I have another quote from my notebook series, the second of those two. And mentioned, now the minutes in tandem with Ryan Dunn in that particular game with that scheme were somewhat abbreviated. But when they're back in their deem roles as the team gets healthy, the scheme can be unlocked. And then it also just helps to have other pieces in addition to just those two that can not just switch, but also cover up for Oso, because if Oso is covering a guard or a wing on the perimeter, that means that someone else has to take on the advantage that was created from that switch underneath that, sometimes around the basket. And that's where players like Royce O'Neal, Kevin Durant, Ryan Dunn, and also Cody Martin step into play where they can take over for Oso's bigger matchup that goes to the paint or goes elsewhere, keep the matchups organized, and then allow for them to be successful going to rebound the basketball, which is often a fatal flaw of a switching defense because the shell is distorted. Positions are kind of moved around, and they haven't had that issue the last couple of games.
Absolutely. And if Mike Budenholzer does survive beyond this season, I'm glad that he was able to finally tailor his approach. I hope that bodes well if they keep him for the future, that he's going to be more open to doing things that aren't just drop coverage.
Yes.
But it is worth noting that, like, I asked him about it in pregame yesterday about the switching, and he said it's been good. He said that's been one of Oso's strengths. He did mention the Reds, that they've been good on that recently, better at that, obviously. So it's good to see these things finally spiraling. Again, it's kind of regrettable that it took this long. But let's get to a couple of super chats here in the show. We got one from our friend Maria, always with the super chats. Thank you for your $2 super chat. She says, I hope Bud sees the value in these recent lineups. I could not agree more. I think there's so much evidence that this is the way to go, that he has to keep with it. I don't know if this was a message from above, as in divine intervention, or above as in the front office, but either way, he found the light. It's just regrettable it took this long. And we have another super chat from Be Calm, See Clearly, $2. I'm going to let Noah go ahead and take this one away.
Here we go, Be Calm. I love how Dunn is such a daddy, man. Heart emoji, hot emoji, heart emoji.
I appreciate the way that you read the Be Calm, See Clearly super chats. It's always one of my favorite things. We are going to get a little bit into, because we do need to talk about what we want the rotation to look like. We are going to talk a little bit about the Suns' upcoming schedule. And I think it's important, especially with the rotation, what that's going to look like when Beal and Grayson return. But before we do that, we're going to take a quick break. Steven, are you looking for a healthier way to relieve aches and pains while getting a better night's sleep?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I would recommend trying Cornbread Hemp's USDA Organic CBD Gummies. Cornbread offers the first USDA Organic CBD gummy in the United States. I did not know that, but their gummies are the highest quality full spectrum gummies on the market. They help with stress relief, better recovery, and improve sleep. Some things that set them apart: they're full spectrum. They're made from flower only, never the whole plant. And they are third-party lab tested for potency, terpenes, and contaminants. vegan, dairy-free, and gluten-free with no artificial flavors or preservatives. So if you do want to give cornbread a try, they're offering PHNX listeners 30% off your first order. Just visit cornbreadhemp.com/PHNX and use promo code PHNX at checkout. That's cornbreadhemp.com/PHNX and use PHNX for 30% off your first order. This is the good life. We should also probably talk about our friends over at Circle K. I love Circle K because there's 2 right by my house, so it's very convenient for me. If you live in Arizona, you're probably near a Circle K somewhere.
Absolutely.
And they also do great deals when you sign up to become an Inner Circle member. I think I am part of the Inner Circle, so I get the 5 cents off per gallon, which is great for gas. But they also got snacks, the drinks, other food items. I mean, my favorite, honestly, are kind of just the plain hot chips that they have. I always love hot chips, so those ones pack quite a punch, and they're a big size bag if it's just a personal bag. Lord knows how many I've eaten those during halftime show here in our office.
That's you that always beats me to it.
It's me always.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
But, join Inner Circle for free by downloading the Circle K app today. Terms and conditions apply at participating locations. Visit circlek.com for details. All right, so welcome back to the PHNX show presented by Bet365. It is time for our push for the playoffs presented by All Pro Shade Concepts. That is quite a mouthful there, but the Suns are currently in 10th with yesterday's win and Dallas's loss to Indiana. They really almost pulled that one out. The second game in a row, those scrappy Mavs almost pulled out a win, but thankfully some divine intervention for the Pacers got them the win. The Suns are now in the 10th spot. They are currently tied with the Mavs in record, but they do own the tiebreaker there. And then the Blazers are 2 games back of Phoenix and Dallas. Before we get into the remaining schedules, I think it's important to note, or at least expand upon, what the hell does Bud do with the rotation once Bradley Beal and Grayson Allen are back? Because we know that Beal is out probably through at least Monday. His 1 week reevaluation period was on Monday. Knowing Bradley Beal, I just don't see him being available for that game. So he'll probably miss at least the next 2 games. Grayson, it feels like he's closer to returning. We have seen him after shoot around in practice recently getting up shots. So it looks like he's getting closer with that foot strain. We'll know more once we get the injury report. And then Mason's dealing with that quad. That doesn't seem like a major injury. Maybe he misses another game or 2, but assuming this team has full health at their disposal, everyone at their disposal, what are you envisioning for the rotation moving forward?
I think that's the looming question that matters maybe most to me. And Coach Bud, for all that I've kind of given him credit for over the last couple of games for pivoting to the players that I've been almost begging to see play more over the last couple of games. Now is going to come the moment of truth. How much does he trust what he's seen over this recent stretch of games? And how much will he be willing to trim on the margins and find opportunity for these players to take the template and what he's seen in this recent stretch of games, add that to what he knows that Grayson Allen and Bradley Beal can bring to the lineup when they're healthy, and find a middle ground to where he's still getting what he needs out of the offensive end from the obvious 2 shooters, but he's also able to dip his minutes bag into the blue-collar boys and extract as much play and production out of that group of players as he possibly can. So for me personally, I would scale, it's unfortunate and big-time salute to Collin Gillespie.
Yeah.
But I think that when this team gets back healthy, he probably sees the immediate dip in minutes to where he might not be playing much, if at all. I think that should naturally open up a pocket of minutes to disperse between Ryan Dunn and Cody Martin in particular. And then from there, if I'm Coach Bud, I would trim down the minutes on Grayson, trim down the minutes on Brad. If they're hot, and obviously you can pivot. But as a template for your rotation, I would scale back those minutes and find ways to allot that between your point of attack defenders, because you cannot get to where you want to be and be successful doing so if Cody Martin and Ryan Dunn are not staking a relevant claim to the minutes total over the course of games.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think Gillespie's probably the one that gets the axe a little bit in terms of being in the rotation, which is unfortunate because he has stepped into the starting role. He has filled in admirably well. He provided that spark in the Clippers game that we thought was maybe the turning point. And to some degree, maybe it was a little bit when Bud actually was playing the guys that proved they could be that turning point. But I do think he's probably the guy that gets axed. I think with Tyus, Tyus's minutes have to be very hit or miss in terms of if he's on, if he's hitting the way that he has been recently off the bench, cool, keep him in there. I don't think he should be in the starting lineup. I think he should continue coming off the bench because Bud did say he's gotten in a groove off the bench recently. But I think his minutes, I think Grayson's minutes, and I think Royce's minutes need to be less than what they are now. Because you look down at the stat sheet a lot of nights and they're playing 26, 28, 30 minutes a game. I just don't think there's room for that. I think Oso should probably take over the backup big spot.
Yep.
I think on the nights when Nick Richards is not playing well, maybe you get Mason in there a little bit. But you need to have that switchable big who provides the defense, the energy we've talked about. Ryan Dunn needs to continue to start. Cody Martin needs to continue to find a way to get minutes. It's tough. It's going to be tough balancing all of these guys' minutes. But I think if you can find a way to dial back Tyus, to dial back Royce, and to dial back Grayson, you open up a few pockets here and there where those guys can come in and continue to have the impact that they have. And honestly, you might have to be flexible on a night in, night out basis and ride the hot hand, whatever that means on a nightly basis.
That's my thing. I think there should be a template that includes those names that we mentioned, but naturally on a game by game basis, whether it's an opponent that's strong on the offensive end and have a handful of guards that you know you're gonna have to defend, so you have a template where you're scaling back minutes for the offense for your defense, or vice versa. I think there should be some ability to adapt in real time with that as well. Naturally, you mentioned the Nick Richards and Mason Plumlee element, how those two should be alternating if Nick doesn't start games well, if he's in foul trouble or whatever. But Oso's minutes should be streamlined at around 20 to 25, no different than Mason's were prior to these last 4 games, or the back-to-back ejections. And then at the guard position with Collin, again, it's tough. I think he's shown that he'll stay ready if an opportunity presents itself. I think that's something you can bank on. But you shouldn't have your season contingent upon if one of your two-way guys is going to be available and ready to play or not.
Yeah, and it is tough. And I do think there's a potential concern to that approach of, we've seen it from coaches here in the past with Monty and Frank. You never know when it's going to be your night to play 5 to 10 or 20 to 25 minutes. That can throw guys out of a groove. It's honestly, a lot of people talk about having all these different options being a good problem to have. Sometimes I think it can be to your detriment when you don't have, these are our 8 or 9 guys. That's it. Nobody is even close to touching these guys unless we have an injury. When you have multiple positions that, if Tyus is shooting well, we can play him. If not, then we'll go to Collin. If Nick is playing well, he continues to play. If he's being a disaster, we got to put in Mason and or Oso. That can throw off players' groove. But this group is just going to have to be ready, and that's where you hope that them being one of the oldest, most veteran teams in the league can help a little bit there. But definitely something to keep an eye on as we push for the playoffs. Let's take a quick look at the remaining schedules. Let's start with the Suns because we've talked about this before, but we know that they have an absolute gauntlet down the stretch here. In the orange, we've got home games here, and in the white, we have road games. They do have an even... not an even split. It's 7 home games and 5 road games. They close out this current 5-game homestand with the Cavs on Friday, the Bucks on Monday, and the Celtics on Wednesday. Good Lord, that is a brutal stretch right there. And that is why we've been emphasizing the importance of these first 2 home games to kind of build some sort of momentum. The Cavs have lost 3 games in a row heading into Friday, so they're probably going to be playing with a certain type of way and feeling a certain type of way. We saw what happened when these teams faced off for the first time. Then you got a road game against Minnesota, who I think they're 7-0 against the Suns dating back to the start of that playoff series last year.
Yep.
You've got the Rockets, who you also have not beat this season. The Bucks again on the road. That's the start of a 3-game road trip. Then you got Celtics, Knicks. That's a really tough one. And then you come back home for Warriors and Thunder. The Thunder are on the second night of a back-to-back, so that might as well be a scheduled loss unless OKC might have nothing to play for. Maybe they rest their guys. But that team is so deep, they could still beat you with their B squad.
That's what they've been doing for majority of the season.
Yeah, and then we got the Spurs, who beat the Suns with their C squad, basically. They did have De'Aaron Fox for that game. No Wemby. De'Aaron Fox is obviously out for the season, so hopefully that's an easy one. And then you close the season on the road against Sacramento, a team that is probably still going to be vying for playoff positioning and might need to win that game. So there are no freebies in this whatsoever. Mm-hmm. Like if the Spurs are probably the easiest one there, and outside of that, maybe the Kings. And then everything else is just pure hellfire. So what are you taking away from that?
What I'm taking from that is the Suns and how they've performed against teams that are in that top 10 range in terms of offense and top 10 range in terms of their defense. Mm-hmm. And naturally, the way that the schedule will have it set up, they're going up against teams that are top 10 in both of those things.
Yep.
And if they're not, by the time they go against them, they will have been over multiple stretches of the season for them to be considered that way. So they're going to have the work cut out for them. They won't be able to duck things on either side of the ball. There's no margin for error. Mm-hmm. You have to be connected and be able to play your defense into your offense and also allow for your offense to set the table for your defense to be successful in a sustained way. And to your point that we got done speaking to in the last segment, rotations have to be sharp. There's no time to be guessing, to be trying to figure out who can fill a void in minutes, because that's what the good teams are going to exploit. They're going to find a way to make you pay for those things. And I think that the other big thing for me is the way they're starting games and starting halves. That third quarter against the Bulls last night, the Bulls are one of the better teams in third quarters, but that's a non-negotiable. Because if you let your foot off the gas in moments where you're going up against these teams that you have left in the schedule, that's enough to take all the hard work you did through the first 24 minutes and now put you at a deficit where you only have 12 to come back, and that's not enough time for you.
Yeah.
So they have to just be sharp all across the board, no margin for error.
Absolutely. And I hope that they are able to iron out some sort of rotation. We talked a little bit about having flexibility and leeway to go a different way if certain guys aren't performing up to the standard you need. But you kind of just hope that the 8 or 9 separate themselves over this home stretch and make Bud's job a little bit more straightforward in that regard. The good news is out of those 12 games, only one is a back-to-back, that Thunder game, and you're hoping that by then OKC, I think they're already on the verge of locking up the 1 seed. So hopefully they will have nothing to play for by that point, rest some guys. But it is worth noting over the last 2 months, the Suns' wins are really not that impressive. You've got the Bulls twice without Zach LaVine, the post-LaVine trade. You've got the tanking Raptors without Ingram. You've got the Kings after the De'Aaron Fox trade. You've got the Mavs who are missing Kyrie Irving, Anthony Davis, all of their centers, and basically their soul after trading Luka Doncic. You've got the Clippers who, for whatever reason, the Suns just absolutely own this season.
Yeah.
That's probably their best one. And then the injury-ravaged Pelicans who were missing Zion, CJ, Herb Jones. And the Jazz, who we needed a Grayson Allen buzzer beater to force overtime. So,
right.
Not great over the last 2 months, but we're hoping that just playing the right players and switching more on defense and all these things we've talked about help them in that regard. Let's take a look at the Dallas Mavericks schedule. They have 5 at home, 7 on the road, and they have 2 back-to-backs remaining. So they have the most road games of these 3 teams that we're going to talk about. They have the most back-to-backs of these teams. They've got the Pistons at home. Then they have a 4-game road trip against the Nets, Knicks, Magic, and Bulls. Then they come back home for 2 games against the Nets and Hawks. They've got a back-to-back on the road against the Clippers. Then they've got the Lakers at home, the Raptors at home, and they close out the season against the Grizzlies. A much lighter schedule for Dallas. We've seen them be scrappy. We saw them almost beat Indiana. We saw them almost beat another team recently that wasn't that bad.
Philly, I think it was, right?
Yeah, that's right. Philly. They are bad, but they're desperate. They're fighting for playoff positioning. That's
Quentin
right.
Grimes is not having it.
No, he's been fantastic for them, right?
Yeah.
Recently, another thorn in Dallas' side here down the stretch. Steven, I don't know if you agree with me, but I don't think the Mavs are the Suns' main competition for the 10 seed anymore.
I don't think so. I think the main competition for that 10 seed is the Phoenix Suns themselves.
That's true.
I maintain that stance, and it's because so many of the things that we've seen them struggle with have been self-inflicted, self-induced type of things, where when they handle their business, they align with winning in basically a double-digit fashion in terms of wins over losses. And when they don't, you flip that over. Which side are they going to align more with? And that's what matters most for them. But I also think that they're being done a solid from the basketball guys by way of Nico Harrison and his malpractice and the repercussions for that malpractice, and just putting them in a situation where they don't even know who's going to be available on a day-to-day. Yet alone trying to look ahead in the schedule and see if they can get a win or two, and also pray for the downfall of the Phoenix Suns in that process too.
Right. And we've heard the reports that Anthony Davis could return. Again, I have no idea.
I've been hearing that for like at least 7 to 10 days.
That is also fair. Yeah. We've been hearing that for like 4 to 5 years with Anthony Davis, honestly. But the bigger question is why they would even bring him back. I don't know. It feels like borderline malpractice, like the higher ups trying to save their asses in terms of not look so bad for making the worst trade in NBA history, but that's neither here nor there. We will take a look at Portland's remaining schedule, but first we're going to take a real quick break. I want to talk to you guys about Carol Roy's team real quick, and this is coming from someone who owns a home. I think the biggest thing that I learned when Carol Royce and her people came into our office, Carol Royce is great, by the way. She has been a Suns season ticket holder for years now. She's a big fan of Valley Sports. But the biggest thing that I took away from her when she was here in the office was emphasizing to everyone here that does not own a home, time is of the essence. There's a real sense of urgency because that housing market is going to continue to go up and up. So if you can find a way to get into the housing market now, do it. Find a way to do it. Find a way to scrape that money together. And Carol Royce is the first person that I would recommend going to in order to make that work because she wants to help you. It's not transactional with her. It's about helping you find your forever home or putting you in position to get the assets together and understand what it will take to own a home. With Carol's 18-month buyback guarantee, you can buy with peace of mind. So if you are ready to find your dream home, take the next step. Call Carol Royce at 480-776-5231 or visit Carol online at carolroyceteam.com and tell them PHNX sent you, especially. That's carolroyceteam.com. Terms and conditions apply. We also... I was going to read a Gila River ad before, but we don't have a watch party there coming up. But they have a lot more there than just our watch parties. They have great food. They have a lot of different restaurants. They have the Upper Deck Kitchen and Bar that we normally go to. I was very sad that we didn't have the Eagle anymore. We told people about the chicken sandwich, but they do have an equally good chicken sandwich, and you can get it Nashville hot style, which is always fun. So from the first step to the final dunk, discover the history and artistry behind each pair. The Bibby's personal collection, Mike Bibby, that is, spans decades. So you do you at Gila River Resorts and Casinos. Visit playatgila.com for more details. Okay, so let's dive into the Blazers because I think they're definitely the biggest competition for the 10 seed in my mind. They are still 2 games back, so you have a little bit of a cushion there. They have been playing better basketball. I think they're 18-11 since mid-January when they started to kind of turn things around on that front. They haven't been playing as well recently. I think they're on a 3-game win streak, but it was like the Wizards, the Raptors, and a Grizzlies team that the Suns almost beat a few weeks ago when they were playing terrible basketball.
No Ja in that game, too.
No.
Which helps a lot.
Right. That obviously does help. So let's take a look at Portland's remaining schedule here. They've got home games against the Nuggets, Celtics, and Cavs. So a really brutal start, much like the Suns for their upcoming 3 games. They've also got a road trip, a 5-game road trip, which is kind of brutal for a team all the way on the West Coast to go all the way. They've got Sacramento to start, and then they fly all the way to New York. They've got Atlanta, they've got Toronto, and they've got Chicago. Now, outside of the Knicks, those are all pretty winnable games in my mind, but we do see over the course of a long road trip, sometimes you have a game or two where you just slip up because of all the travel, because of being away from home for that long. So if you're a Suns fan, you're kind of hoping for, a Hawks win here, maybe a Bulls win there, since the Bulls have won 5 of their last 7. And then you've got a home game against the Spurs. You've got the Jazz on the road, which will probably be a demolishment. And then you close out with the Warriors and the Lakers at home. And both of those teams could very well be competing for playoff positioning at that stage in the season because of how the West is so bunched up. The Lakers have been playing well when they've been healthy. The Warriors, I think, are 15-3 since they traded for the guy the Suns were trying to trade for. We may have understated how much Jimmy Butler could help a team in dire straits. But, Steven, when you look at that schedule, what are your thoughts for Portland's outlook?
My thoughts with Portland are kind of independent of the schedule, and it's the fact that they're a younger team. They're a team that's still figuring things out on an individual level, yet alone as an actual team. I think they struck some gold in that recent stretch that they had when they beat the Suns, especially in that back-to-back, the home and home that they had.
Sure.
But I don't think they have enough offense to keep up with the teams that they're going up against. In addition to that, though, I think maybe the big thing that was hidden for them was their defense in that stretch. Playing a little bit of zone. Tumani Kamara winning the defensive player of the month in the month of February.
Yeah.
He's not going to drop off, but the pieces around him aren't going to be playing to that level defensively that they need for them to get that type of win percentage that they had earlier in the season. So I don't think they'll have enough to get through the finish line. I think that was just like a quick hitter type of stretch, but the Suns still have to handle their business at the end of the day, and they're in the driver's seat, which is where you want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Blazers are a real threat. I think, to your point, the Suns' destiny is in their own hands, and it's kind of ironic that we're at this point. The expectations and the outlook have obviously changed because coming into the season, it was we want to beat the contenders because we're contending for a title, and now it's we want to beat the contenders because otherwise we're going to miss the play. So the context there is very different, and it's unfortunate, but this is kind of what is going to make or break the season. And if you're going to argue that the season's already broken, I'm really not going to belabor that point with you. I don't disagree, but the Suns have no incentive to tank. They have no incentive to lose these games, and as we've talked about multiple times, they owe it to themselves to evaluate what the right fits are around Devin Booker and possibly Kevin Durant, what this team looks like without Bradley Beal, who we've talked about. I still don't know if you can conceivably shut him down, but I do know that the defense over these last handful of games where Brad has played sparingly has been very different. I don't think you're reaching your ceiling that we expected with this group with Brad out, but I do think for what it is right now, they have been better off without him. Statistically, on the defensive end, on the eye test, like it's been night and day since he's been out of the lineup. So I do think you really, like you said, we mentioned Tyus and Royce and all these other guys that you can reduce their minutes. If Bradley Beal is going out there and the team is not defending the way they have been recently or been a net negative, things are going to get real uncomfortable on that front because you need every win that you can get. You are in the home stretch of the season here. Any final thoughts on remaining schedule or rotations or anything before we dive into our last practice updates?
Yeah, to that latter point that you made, if you being Coach Budenholzer are okay with taking him out of the starting lineup and putting him into a reserve role and then bringing him back into the starting lineup, if you're able to, like we said, flip that first domino and even demote him in any capacity and role name, even if the minutes didn't really shift much, you should be more than okay and comfortable enough to pivot away from him in moments where you see his impact on the game is not where you need it to be.
Yeah.
Now, naturally, if you got the 2 point of attack guys, the defense shouldn't be as much of an issue because he's not being overtasked in the ways in which he was when he's been starting or even when he was the sixth man for the team.
Sure.
So that checks off one box for him. Is his offensive production where it needs to be? Is he shooting efficiently from deep? Is he going to get the paint touches that you need him to get for him to have that impact on the offense independent of himself, but also just getting to the free throw line and adding that dynamic to the shot profile? If those boxes aren't being checked off for him on the offensive end, pivot to him and lean more into your defense to create more roster balance within the lineups that you're using.
Yeah, that makes sense because I do think like Beal is a better scorer than a lot of guys on this team. Beal can actually get in the lane and create some separation in that way. But there has been a lot that's been left to be desired on the defensive end in particular recently. So you, more than anyone else, honestly, when it comes to Bradley Beal, I think you have to night in, night out, ride the hot hand with him if he does return to the lineup. Someone asked in the chat, I think it was Ted Offensive, what the defensive rating is when Grayson and Tyus are on the court together. I looked that up just now. It is a 113. It is surprisingly not nearly as bad as I thought it would be. The offensive rating is actually the low one. It's 112.9. So their net rating is 0.1, which is basically I'm kind of very surprised that that's the number, honestly.
I would have thought it was 116, 117 in this range where it's borderline unplayable.
It feels a lot worse than that.
It does, for sure.
Before we get out of here for the day, we should probably close with some updates from practice. This is mostly just the one big thing that we talked about already was the switchable defense. That's really stood out to me in talking to various players and Coach Bud over the last week or so. that continues to stick out. But the other thing is just the youthful energy.
Yes.
We did talk to Collin Gillespie at practice today about what he's trying to bring in that starting role, and he kind of touched on the second thing that stands out.
Just energy, a lot of pace, trying to create turnovers, speed people up, rebound, do all the little things. Obviously, we have two of the best scorers in the world on our team, so it's very easy on offense. Just get them the ball, and also pick your spots where you can be aggressive, so teams have to stay with you a little bit, and then play off my jump shot when it comes to me. But yeah, like I said, just do all the little things. I think the younger guys kind of bring that young energy, and it kind of just flows throughout the team and instills confidence on everybody on the defensive end.
I consider myself an observant person because it's part of my job, obviously, but him and Oso and Ryan Dunn, every time that they brought up the young guys, bring the youthful energy, they've kind of had like a little smirk on their face. And I wonder if it's because it's something that they joke about in the locker room, or if it's because they all know that, like, yeah, our team's kind of old. We need some of these guys to come in here and play with energy. And if it's noticeable to us, it's got to be noticeable to them as well. But they're also very polite in the way that they attack it. Like, yeah, the young guys, not that these guys are old or slow or whatever, but we bring a certain energy and athleticism to the table. And it's really funny the way that they've all kind of smirked when they've touched on that.
The answer to you wondering if it's conversations had in the locker room or just them knowing it, the answer is yes. It's definitely both of those two things being married in one thing. And I think that's another thing that was kind of the elephant in the room. Why are you playing such a veteran-heavy rotation and not balancing some of that out with the youthful pieces that not just because they're young, but they have a specific impact on the team?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's play a real quick video while we're on the subject of Collin, because actually, you know what? Let's do Nick Richards on Cody Martin first, because I do think it's taken all of 3 games for Suns fans to want him back next season. And I tried to tell you, and Steven tried to tell you too.
We did our job.
We did the video breakdowns. I did a written breakdown on top of it. We tried to tell you. Here's what Nick Richards had to say about Cody Martin making an impact.
Definitely on the defensive end, I think he makes his presence noticed. Guarding the best guys on the team, guarding the best ball handler. You know, he's been, when we were at the Hornets, that was basically his assignment every single night. So I think that he's embracing that role when coach is giving it to him, and he's not shying away from it. You know, he wants that confrontation. He wants to be in a position to guard the best players on the other team, and I think that, you know, he's just going to embrace that role.
Okay, so first it's come to my attention that I left Steven hanging.
There
so
it is.
My bad.
There it is.
My bad on that, Steven. I was so engrossed by what Nick Richards was about to say that I missed your
We
fist
messed
bump.
up the switch.
Yeah,
Man.
I totally messed it up. But I love the way that Nick Richards touched on that by saying he embraces that role. He wants the confrontation of guarding the best player. A lot of times you hear somebody say, like, yeah, this guy takes on that challenge, or he, you know, embrace it, or he has to do that. But to hear him say, like, yeah, no, he wants the confrontation. I like the wording on that.
Yes.
And he would know as his Hornets teammate for several years. Martin spent his whole year there. I just want to thank everybody for tuning in on TV. Remember that the conversation always continues over at GoPHNX.com. Steven, I know that we've both been impressed with Cody Martin, but anything that Richards had to say surprise you, or I mean, he pretty much nailed it, I feel like.
Nothing surprises me at all. It matches everything that I heard on accounts from players or coaches that spent time with both of those two in Charlotte or in their college days. But the big thing for me with Cody, and this goes with Nick as well, Steve Clifford and Charles Lee, both of those two, Steve Clifford last season, Charles Lee this season, dipped into getting more versatility out of Cody Martin and Nick Richards than we've seen with both of those two being in the Suns context so far. That's something I've always kept in the back of my mind. Saw him put Cody Martin literally the start possessions on Miles Turner, on Karl Anthony Towns, and have impact there. Again, just to play to the switch and cross-matching dynamic. And Nick Richards is somewhere on a non-shooter, being able to kind of take over for the roller and things like that. That's a nucleus. They have a chemistry that pre-exists their time with the Suns. That's something that should be able to help make those lineups that we're talking about or just generally when they're getting into just wanting to switch more, be more effective and impactful, because Nick Richards is not, like, this is not a new language to him.
Right.
This is something that he's had his feet wet defending up against. There's a game earlier this season against the Pacers where I talk about Cody guarding Miles Turner. Guess who's guarding TJ McConnell?
Yeah,
Nick Richards.
Yep.
And it looks weird because you have someone that's 7 feet tall guarding someone that's like 5'11", 6 feet, that's bringing the ball to the court. But it just gives the offense something to think about. Do you want to go directly at this? Because now that means that Pascal Siakam is not touching the ball. Obi Toppin, if he's on the court, he's not getting the ball. It's messing up the flow of the offense. And again, that's just something that the Suns can't get to if they want to. But I've appreciated seeing Nick get into scenarios where he's switching on a Luka Doncic on Sunday against the Lakers.
Yeah.
Not to just guard him one-on-one, but it's a double team coming immediately after that switch. And those are like kind of the layers to the switching scheme that they're starting to build a formula out with.
Yeah, it was nice to hear him, obviously, from the clip we played earlier, talk about in practice today, we are adding layers to it. We are building on it. So that's always good to hear. Last one that we got, I thought this was interesting. Collin talked at length today about kind of working his way back from injury, because a lot of people forget he had fractured his ankle earlier in the year, like 2 minutes into a G League game. And this is a guy who, as he touched on, like he had fractured or dislocated an ankle in the same leg when he broke his leg. So this was nothing new to him, but it was a big setback. And for him to go through that, to go through not being in the rotation at all as a two-way guy, to now being the starter with Bradley Beal and Grayson Allen out, that's a pretty big swing. So I asked him a little bit about that at practice.
When it comes to those lows, like Dwayne was talking about, working your way back from the ankle and not being in the rotation, was anyone kind of giving you advice, or how did you kind of get through that stretch to get to this point?
I mean, I've been through it before, right? Like, I broke my leg, and then I dislocated that same ankle when I broke my leg. So I've been through a lot of injuries before, and this one wasn't as bad as that one. I was out for the whole year, but I have a close circle in terms of like my family, friends back home, and then the Suns organization has been really good for me just in terms of not rushing me back, helping me get my feet underneath me, and then the G League, going down there playing, getting live game reps, and then all my teammates up here, obviously, and down there just giving me confidence, just go play my game and try to help the team win anyway.
You mentioned the close circle. When you have a moment like that Clippers game and now you're in the rotation and starting, how rewarding is it to be able to share that moment with the people that kind of help get you through some of those tougher times?
Yeah, I think that's the most special part about it. People that have been with me the whole time and have been in my corner, just doing all the little things for me, obviously, while I was hurt. And I remember when I broke my leg, I think my mom was like, I'll fly out there, I'll do whatever you need. And so it's special to just be able to just be back on the floor. I don't take anything for granted now. Obviously, when you lose the game for a while, you might just get perspective on it. So anytime I'm able to get on the floor, it's just a blessing, and I'm extremely grateful for it.
We love a guy with perspective. We love an underdog story, obviously, but I appreciate this game a lot, and I appreciate the journeys and the struggles that these guys go through to get to this point. And it's always fun to hear them kind of speak on it that openly and talk about, yeah, it was difficult. Like, I've been through a lot of injuries, and I had another one, and he talked more about that. We're going to post the video for that on our YouTube channel as well. But we got a couple of super chats to get through before we leave you guys here today. There are over 200 of you in here across platforms. I'm realizing I forgot to set a like goal, but let's try and get to 75 before we get out of here in the next few minutes. We've got a little bit of ground to make up, but I believe in you guys. Hit the like button while you're here. Thank you, Maria, for your super chat for $10. Can't remember if you already talked about this, but what would be your proposed lineups, rotations, minutes distribution when Beal, Grayson, Plumlee return? We know Bud loves giving them lots of minutes. I probably should have read this one earlier in the show. I hope we were able to answer your question there, Maria. But we have another one from Maria for $5. Correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't Gillespie being a two-way affect how many games he can actually play? What happens with him if they make the playoffs? Fantastic question. There is a limit on the number of games that he can play. I need to actually look into this and see how many he's logged so far. But if they do make the playoffs, two-way players are not eligible, so they would need to convert him to a standard contract. And I'm pretty sure they filled up their last roster spot already. So someone would have to be waived, and Gillespie would have to be signed to an actual contract for him to be on the postseason roster. So that is something to keep an eye on. Obviously, the Suns still have a lot of ground to make up. It might not matter in the end. But if they do work their way into the play-in and win those 1 or 2 games it takes to secure the 8 seed, Gillespie has been a guy that I would rather have in the rotation over a couple of players that are on vet minimum deals. So
100%.
Something to keep in mind.
And in the back of my mind, Keith Smith over at, I think it was Spot Rack, if I'm not mistaken, had mentioned right after the trade deadline that he had Monte Morris as a player that he could potentially see being bought out / waived for a multitude of different reasons, but the largest one being that smaller contract, hasn't been in the rotation. They might want to potentially do something with the open roster spot. That's probably one of the most convenient ways, as he's not, really been in the rotation. Some of it because of injury of late, but more so just because of the flux of the rotation right now.
Yeah, that would make sense. It would also be tough because we love Monte here.
Absolutely.
I think we both agree that earlier in the season when he was playing well and getting minutes, it was weird to see him kind of get phased out so quickly and just never get a look again. Obviously, the back injury has been an issue for him lately, keeping him off the floor. But it was kind of funny because someone on Twitter, I had said, I don't think Monte got a fair shake. And someone was like, man, you want everyone to play. And I went to practice the other day, and D. Lee came up to me, and he was like, so you want everyone to play, huh? I'm like, man, come on. Of course I do. But it's okay to acknowledge that certain ships have sailed, but also acknowledge that some guys didn't get a fair shake for what they were providing.
Just for what it's worth, Monte Morris in non-garbage time minutes still has the best net on the team.
Yeah.
So that's not by mistake at all.
No. He was good in his limited minutes. We do have one final super chat from Be Calm, See Clearly. Noah, go ahead and take it away.
Steven, Be Calm, See Clearly asked that, do you want to be my adoptive father? Heart.
I'll have to respectfully decline.
Wow.
But we appreciate you, Be Calm, See Clearly.
That's crazy.
We appreciate you always.
That's crazy.
Steven said, I see what
legs.
you're going through preparing for fatherhood, and I am okay for the time being.
That's the thing. I can't, nah.
You asked the wrong person, Be Calm, See Clearly. I'm sorry. Maybe next time. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to this edition of the PHNX Suns podcast. Israel, Maria, King Nacho, Optical Illusion, Sandman, all of you, we appreciate you being here on some random, what is it, Tuesday? Thursday? Yeah, one of those T days.
He said
I'm ready for the homestand to be over, and we're only 2 games in, so running on fumes, but it's totally fine. Thank you for taking a break from March Madness to come hang out with us and talk Suns. Until tomorrow, enjoy more basketball, and we'll be right back here tomorrow with some Suns coverage for pregame and for postgame.
We all silly like the mayor.